The city of Corumbá, on the border between Brazil and Paraguay, was a mosaic of intertwined cultures and histories. The Paraguay River meandered lazily through the city, as if observing the lives that depended on it. For João Gutierrez, this river was more than a landscape, it was a symbol of resistance and continuity. João was a respected community leader and admired for his courage and determination. By the age of 35, he had dedicated his life to fighting the oppression and injustice that plagued his community. With short black hair and a firm look, João did not let adversity get him down. He was a constant presence on the streets, always ready to help anyone in need and face any challenge. That September morning, João met with other community leaders in a small square in the center of Corumbá. The sun was already beginning to punish the dry land, but that didn't stop the population from gathering to hear his words. João climbed onto a park bench and began to speak, his voice resonating with passion and determination. "We can no longer accept the presence of these criminals in our city," he declared, referring to the group led by Antonio. "They spread fear and destruction, but we are stronger when we are united. We must resist and fight for our freedom." The crowd applauded fervently, inspired by João's words. Among those present was Mateus, a young journalist who had recently arrived in Corumbá. He had heard about João's reputation and decided to follow his fight. With a notebook in hand, Mateus recorded every word, feeling the urgency and justice in the leader's voice. But John's words did not go unnoticed by his enemies. Antonio, the leader of the criminal group, was determined to silence any form of resistance. Tall and imposing, with a scar that ran across his face, Antonio was feared and respected by his men. He ruled with an iron fist and did not tolerate disobedience. That night, while João and his allies planned their next actions, Antonio gathered his henchmen in a remote warehouse. "João Gutierrez needs to be eliminated," he said, his voice sharp. "He is disrupting our business and mobilizing the community against us. I want them to capture him, dead or alive." The henchmen nodded, ready to carry out their boss's orders. And so, the chase began. João, aware of the imminent danger, decided to act quickly. With the help of Mariana, a faithful and courageous ally, and Mateus, he began to plan his escape. Mariana was a strong and determined woman with long black hair and eyes that reflected an unshakable determination. She knew every corner of Corumbá and was willing to risk her life for João's cause. "We need to get out of here before they find us," said Mariana, looking at João with concern. "I have a safe hiding place on the riverbank. We can take shelter there until we think of our next move." John agreed, knowing that time was against them. With Mateus by his side, he followed Mariana through the dark streets of Corumbá. Mateus's heart was beating fast, but he knew that his mission as a journalist was crucial. He wanted to document every moment of that fight, so that the world would know of João's courage and the injustice that was plaguing the region. As they walked silently, João felt a weight on his shoulders. He knew the fight for justice would be long and arduous, but he was willing to sacrifice everything for his community. The words of his father, who had also been a community leader, echoed in his mind, "Justice is never easy, my son, but it is the only thing worth fighting for." In the darkness of the night, João, Mariana and Mateus arrived at the hiding place. It was a small cabin on the riverbank, surrounded by dense trees that offered some protection. There, they prepared themselves for what was to come, aware that the battle had just begun. And so, in the apparent tranquility of the night, João committed himself once again to fighting for justice. knowing that the boundary of blood that separated good from evil was about to be challenged. Dawn brought a false sense of calm. The banks of the Paraguay River reflected the orange sky, and the cool breeze seemed to whisper promises of a new beginning. However, for João, Mariana, and Mateus, the day promised to be full of challenges. In the small cabin by the river, the trio planned their next steps. João analyzed a map of the region, tracing escape routes and possible meeting points with allies. Mariana checked the supplies, making sure they had what they needed to survive. Mateus, in turn, recorded everything in his notebook, aware of the importance of documenting those moments for posterity. "We need to move quickly," said João, breaking the silence. "Antonio will not give up easily. He has resources and men loyal to him. We need to be one step ahead." Mariana nodded, her eyes determined. "I know some safe places where we can temporarily hide. And I have some contacts who can help us with information and supplies." Matthew looked up from his notebook. "And I can keep recording everything. The truth needs to be told. The world needs to know what's going on here." With the plan in place, they prepared to leave hiding. João knew that time was against them and that every minute counted. As they walked along the riverbank, the tension was palpable. They knew that at any moment they could be found. Meanwhile, Antonio wasted no time. He had divided his men into groups and sent them to various parts of Corumbá. His henchmen, armed and determined, searched every corner of the city in search of João. The order was clear: capture him at any cost. The first skirmish took place in the vicinity of a small village. João and his allies were approaching a meeting point when they heard the sound of approaching engines. They were Antonio's henchmen. Mariana pulled João and Mateus behind a ravine, trying to keep them out of sight. "Stay down," she whispered. "Let's wait for them to pass." But the henchmen didn't pass. They stopped nearby, scanning the area. One of them, a tall, muscular man, got out of the vehicle and began to inspect the place. João held his breath, trying not to make any noise. The tension increased with each passing second. Suddenly, a branch broke under Mateus' feet, attracting the henchman's attention. He turned sharply, pulling out a gun and shouting at the others. "They're here. I found them." John didn't hesitate. He knew they needed to act quickly. "Run," he shouted, pulling Mateus by the hand. Mariana was already on the move, making her way through the dense vegetation. Gunshots began to echo, piercing the silent air of the village. João and his allies ran with all their strength, trying to get as far away as possible. The sound of the henchmen's footsteps behind them was deafening, increasing everyone's adrenaline. After several minutes of desperate flight, they managed to lose their pursuers, hiding in a nearby cave. Panting and sweating, they sat on the damp floor, trying to catch their breath. "That was close," said Mateus, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "We cannot continue like this. We need a better plan." João agreed, still breathing heavily. "You are sure? We need to be more careful. Mariana, is there somewhere safe nearby where we can regroup?" Mariana thought for a moment. "There is an abandoned farm a few kilometers from here. We can shelter in there for a while and think about our next steps." With a new destination in mind, they stood up and prepared to continue. João knew that the fight was just beginning and that they needed all the strength and determination to face the challenges that were to come. Antonio's relentless persecution was just the beginning, and the true battle for justice and freedom for his community was far from over. The abandoned farm was a temporary refuge, but it offered the security and time needed to plan their next moves. Situated in a remote area surrounded by dense vegetation, the dilapidated structure still provided shelter from the elements and a tactical advantage against potential attacks. While João, Mariana, and Mateus settled in, tension remained high. They knew they were in a race against time. John called a strategy meeting, using an old wooden table as his makeshift command center. "Our priority is to maintain security and find allies," began João, looking at his companions. "Mariana, you mentioned contacts. Who can help us?" Mariana nodded. "I know some people in town who are loyal to our cause. I can try to contact them discreetly. We need resources and information about Antonio's movements." John agreed. "Do it. Matthew, we need you to keep documenting everything, but we also need you in the field. Your ability to observe and report is crucial." Matthew smiled slightly. "Understood. I will do whatever is necessary." With the tasks distributed, Mariana prepared to leave. Before leaving, she approached João. "Be careful," she said, with concern in her eyes. "Antonio will not give up easily." "I know," replied João, shaking her hand. "We will beat this together." While Mariana infiltrated the city to contact her allies, João and Mateus remained on the farm, reinforcing the defenses and monitoring the surroundings. The tension was palpable, but João's determination never wavered. He knew his cause was just and that he needed to protect his community at any cost. A few days later, Mariana returned with news. "I managed to speak to some contacts. They are willing to help us, but there is a problem. Lucas, his childhood friend, is collaborating with Antonio. He betrayed our cause." The revelation fell like a bomb. João felt a mixture of anger and despair. Lucas was a longtime friend, someone he trusted. Knowing he was on the other side was a devastating blow. "We need to confront him," John said, his voice firm. "He knows our movements and can put us in danger. We need to know why he did it." With a new goal in mind, João, Mariana, and Mateus planned a meeting with Lucas. They knew it would be risky, but they needed answers. They met in a secluded place, away from prying eyes. When Lucas arrived, the tension was evident. João looked at him, his eyes reflecting the pain of betrayal. "Why, Lucas? Why did you join Antonio?" Lucas looked away, visibly uncomfortable. "I had no choice, João. Antonio forced me. He threatened my family. I didn't want to betray you." "You could have come to us," argued John. "We could have helped." Lucas shook his head. "It was too late. I was already committed. But I can help you now. I have information about Antonio's plans." John pondered for a moment. "We need to trust you, Lucas. But know that your loyalty will be tested. We are in a fight for justice, and any betrayal can be fatal." Lucas nodded, aware of the gravity of the situation. With the information he provided, João and his allies began to plan their next moves. They knew the battle would be difficult, but they were determined to fight until the end. And so, as night fell over the abandoned farm, João, Mariana, Mateus, and Lucas prepared to face the challenges that would come. The alliance had been tested and the fight for justice was far from over. Antonio's relentless persecution was just the beginning, and the real battle for the community's freedom and safety was about to begin. The days that followed were marked by a series of ambushes and clashes. Using the information provided by Lucas, João and his allies were able to plan strategic attacks against Antonio's henchmen. The skirmishes were intense and dangerous, but each victory strengthened the group's resolve. Mateus, the journalist, was always present, recording every moment with a watchful eye. He had become more than an observer. His active participation in the struggle gave him a new perspective on the courage and resilience of John and his followers. His notes captured the brutality of the clashes, but also the hope that emerged from the fight for justice. In one of the ambushes, João led a surprise attack against Antonio's supply convoy. The action was quick and efficient. With Mariana and Lucas by their side, they managed to neutralize the guards and capture the supplies. It was a significant victory, which raised the group's morale and weakened Antonio's forces. However, the fight was not without its sacrifices. During a particularly fierce confrontation, one of John's allies was seriously injured. João felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, but he knew he couldn't give up. Each sacrifice was a reminder of the cost of freedom and the importance of fighting on. Matthew, impressed by John's bravery, wrote in his notebook, "The fight for justice is marked by courage and sacrifice." João Gutierrez, with his unshakable determination, leads his followers in a battle against oppression. Victory is never guaranteed, but the fight for a better world is a cause worth any risk. As the conflicts continued, João and his allies began to realize that the final battle was approaching. Antony's forces were becoming more desperate and aggressive, and attacks were becoming more frequent. João knew they needed a decisive plan to end the threat once and for all. One night, while discussing strategies on the abandoned farm, João had an idea. "We need to take the fight to Antonio," he said, with determination. "We will attack your headquarters and dismantle your operation. It will be risky, but it is the only way to ensure the safety of our community." Mariana and Lucas agreed, knowing it was a risky but necessary move. Mateus, with his notebook in hand, was ready to document each step of the plan. The final battle was brewing on the horizon, and everyone knew that the future of the Corumbá community depended on the success of this operation. With the plan drawn up, João and his allies prepared for the decisive confrontation. They knew they were about to face the biggest challenge of their lives, but the courage and determination that guided them were unwavering. The fight for justice and freedom was about to reach its climax, and the fate of Corumbá depended on the bravery of its defenders. The decision to attack Antonio's headquarters meant that João and his allies needed time and space to plan thoroughly. They decided to take refuge even deeper in the Pantanal, where the vastness and density of the vegetation would offer better protection against possible ambushes. The Pantanal was a landscape both majestic and treacherous. Flooded areas, twisted trees, and a rich and varied fauna made the terrain a constant challenge. João and his group needed to be alert not only to human dangers, but also to natural ones. However, Mariana's familiarity with the place was a big advantage. "We have to be quick and silent," instructed Mariana as she led the group along an almost invisible trail. "I know an old hunting lodge we can use as a base." Arriving at the shelter, a sturdy wooden hut partially hidden by vegetation, the group began preparing. João divided tasks and established a strict routine of vigils to ensure safety. On calm nights, while the sound of animals and the distant murmur of water filled the air, João felt the weight of responsibility increase. The proximity of the final confrontation and the need to protect his allies and his community kept him awake, planning and re-evaluating every detail of the operation. Mateus, in turn, continued documenting the events. His narrative now included not only the challenges faced, but also the life stories of those involved in the resistance. He recorded moments of camaraderie and courage, offering an intimate and human view of the struggle. Lucas, aware of the distrust that still hung over him, did his best to prove his loyalty. He shared valuable information about Antonio's operations, helping João adjust his plans. The tension between him and João decreased as the results of his information proved to be accurate and useful. As the days passed, the group began to outline the attack on Antonio's headquarters. Using maps and detailed information, they traced infiltration routes and strategic points for surprise attacks. João knew that coordination and precision would be crucial to success. "We need to synchronize our movements," explained João during a meeting. "Any mistake can be fatal. Antonio is ruthless and his men are well trained." Mariana added, "We know the terrain better than they do. This is our advantage. We need to use it to the fullest." Finally, the night of the attack arrived. Under the cover of darkness, the group silently departed the cabin, crossing the Pantanal with skill and precision. The air was thick with tension and expectation. Everyone knew that the future of their fight depended on that moment. As they approached Antonio's headquarters, João felt a mix of adrenaline and determination. He looked at his allies, each prepared for what was to come, and felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility. The fight for justice was about to reach its culmination, and he knew that, regardless of the outcome, they had done everything in their power. The darkness of the night provided a protective cover as João and his allies approached Antonio's headquarters. The structure was situated in an isolated area, protected by armed guards and barbed wire fences. João knew that the key to success was surprise and precision. Before launching the attack, the group met one last time to review the details of the plan. João, with a rudimentary map in front of him, pointed out the critical points of the operation. "We need to neutralize the guards on the watchtowers first. This will give us a window of time to infiltrate." Mariana, with her sharp gaze, complimented João's instructions. "Lucas and I will take care of the guards in the towers. João, you and Mateus should focus on disabling the security system and clearing the way for the main attack." Matthew, writing down the details, asked, "What about after we're inside?" "We need to get to Antonio's command center," replied João. "Destroy his communications operations and capture or neutralize Antonio. This will disorganize your men and give us the advantage." With everything prepared, the group dispersed, each one taking their position. The sound of crickets and the rustle of leaves in the wind were the only sounds that filled the night as they moved silently through the vegetation. Lucas and Mariana were the first to act. With precise movements, they neutralized the guards in the watchtowers using tranquilizer darts. Without alarm, they managed to guarantee safe entry for João and Mateus. Adrenaline was running through his veins, but calm and focus were essential. As they approached the security system, João and Mateus encountered minimal resistance. Using improvised tools, they managed to deactivate the system, allowing the group to advance without detection. Every step was meticulously calculated. Inside the complex, the hallways were mazes of shadows and flashing lights. João led, his senses sharpened by years of combat experience. They moved like ghosts, avoiding patrols and disabling isolated guards. Finally, they arrived at the command center. The room was filled with communications equipment and detailed maps of Antonio's operations. João knew that this was the heart of the criminal operation. Without hesitation, they began destroying the equipment, cutting communications and leaving Antonio's men in disarray. At that moment, Antonio entered the room, surprised but quickly composing himself. "Gutierrez," he growled, "always knew you'd be trouble?" Joao positioned himself defensively, ready for the confrontation. "Your tyranny ends here, Antonio. The Corumba community will no longer be its victim." The fight that followed was intense and brutal. Joao and Antonio faced each other with a ferocity fueled by years of conflict and hatred. Meanwhile, Mariana and Lucas defended the entrance, preventing Antonio's henchmen from interfering. Mateus, even in the heat of the confrontation, continued to record everything. He knew that regardless of the outcome, the story of that moment needed to be told. Finally, with a precise blow, Joao managed to disarm Antonio, leaving him immobilized on the ground. "It's over," he said, panting. "Justice prevails." With Antony captured and his operations destroyed, John and his allies knew they had achieved a crucial victory. But the battle did not end there. They needed to ensure that peace and justice were maintained in Corumba. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, John looked at his allies and felt a rush of relief and hope. They had won an important battle, but the fight for justice and freedom continued. And with courage and determination, they were ready to face any challenge that came their way. With Antony captured and his headquarters in ruins, it seemed that victory was within reach. However, John knew that true peace was still far away. Antonio's henchmen, disorganized but not defeated, still posed a threat. The fight for the safety and freedom of Corumba continued. Back at the abandoned farm, Joao and his allies began to plan their next steps. "We need to ensure that Antonio's influence is completely eradicated," said Joao, looking at the map. "His henchmen are still spread across the region. We need to dismantle what's left of their operation." Lucas, who had proven his loyalty during the attack, suggested, "We can use the information we got from headquarters. We know where the other leaders are hiding. We can attack before they regroup." Mariana agreed. "We will divide our efforts. Joao, you lead a group to attack the hideouts. Mateus and I can coordinate with allies in the city to ensure the safety of the community." Mateus, always with his notebook in hand, was ready to document the next phase of the fight. "We need to act quickly," he said. "Every moment counts." The attacks on Antonio's henchmen's hideouts were quick and efficient. Joao, leading a group of loyal allies, managed to capture or neutralize the remaining leaders. Each victory was a step towards peace, but it also came with sacrifices. Joao knew that each life lost was a reminder of the price of freedom. During one of these operations, Joao found himself in a desperate situation. Surrounded by enemies and with few options, he decided to make a sacrifice to ensure the safety of his allies. In an act of bravery, he faced the henchmen alone, allowing his group to escape. Seriously injured, Joao managed to resist until help arrived. Mariana and Mateus, upon finding him, felt a mixture of relief and despair. They knew that John had made the ultimate sacrifice for the cause. As they took him back to safety, Mateus wrote in his notebook, "Joao Gutierrez, with his courage and sacrifice, secured the freedom of his community. His legacy will be remembered as a beacon of hope and justice." Joao, aware of what was to come, looked at his friends and felt a deep peace. "Continue the fight," he said, his voice weak but firm. "Justice and freedom are bigger than any of us." With these words, John laid himself in final rest, knowing that he had done everything in his power to protect his community. His sacrifice would not be in vain. The news of Joao's sacrifice quickly spread throughout Corumba. His death was a profound blow to the community, but it also served as a catalyst for unity and resistance. The people, inspired by their bravery, came together to ensure that peace and justice prevailed. Mariana and Mateus, now leaders of the resistance, continued Joao's work. They strengthened the community's defenses, ensured the capture of Antonio's last henchman, and began to rebuild the areas devastated by the conflict. The fight was not over yet, but Joao's determination and courage continued to guide his steps. Matthew, in particular, felt a responsibility to honor John's legacy. With his detailed notes and vivid accounts, he compiled the story of the resistance into a book titled A Border of Blood. The book not only documented the events, but also captured the essence of the fight for justice and freedom. Mateus' work became a source of inspiration for many, both inside and outside Corumba. People from all over Brazil and beyond began to hear about João Gutierrez's courage and the resilience of his community. The story of A Blood Border spread, highlighting the importance of the fight against oppression and the relentless pursuit of justice. As the community of Corumba began to recover and rebuild, a monument was erected in honor of João Gutierrez. The statue, located in the center of the city, represented João standing, looking at the horizon, an eternal symbol of courage and sacrifice. Mariana, looking at the monument, felt a wave of emotions. "John may be gone, but his spirit lives on in each of us," she told Matthew. "He showed us the way, and now it is our responsibility to continue his fight." Matthew nodded, his eyes shining with determination. John's story is a reminder that justice and freedom are ongoing achievements. We can never stop fighting for a better world. And so, as sunlight bathed the city of Corumba, the fight for justice and freedom continued. Guided by João Gutierrez's legacy, the community was more united and stronger than ever. The story of A Blood Border became a legend, a beacon of hope for all those who believed in a better world. And João's spirit, with his courage and sacrifice, continued to inspire generations, reminding everyone that the fight for justice is eternal and worth any price. Years have passed since the events that transformed Corumba into a symbol of resistance and courage. The city, once marked by fear and oppression, now flourished as an example of justice and freedom. The scars of the past were still present, but they served as reminders of what had been achieved. Mariana and Mateus, now respected and recognized leaders, continued to work for the community. Their actions, inspired by John's teachings and sacrifice, ensured that peace and justice were maintained. The story of Fronteira de Sangue was told in schools, passed down from generation to generation, as a tribute to those who fought for freedom. Matthew, reflecting on the years that had passed, wrote a final chapter for his book. In it, he highlighted not only historical events, but also lessons learned. He wrote about the importance of unity, courage, and determination in the fight against injustice. As he wrote, Matthew felt John's presence at his side, like a silent but powerful guide. "I knew that, regardless of how much time passed, João Gutierrez's legacy would never be forgotten." And so, with the last period in his book, Mateus closed the notebook, satisfied. He looked at the horizon, where the sun was setting over the Paraguay River, and felt a deep peace. The fight for justice and freedom was eternal, but with courage, determination, and unity, they knew they could face any challenge. The spirit of João Gutierrez, with his bravery and sacrifice, would continue to inspire the fight for justice in Corumba and beyond, an eternal reminder that true freedom is worth any price.